if you're the offer owner, you're the CEO, your job is to put in place in the business like foundational principles that are timeless, that your next person that's going to come in can take those principles with examples, and then they can use those principles to then create a system, right? And then this is what you're talking about hiring leaders, to hire, like, obviously not a VA, like you're hiring a leader, right? And I think what typically happens a lot of the time is the person gets so distracted and focused on the system, they don't see the principles behind it, like the level and the standard that they need to keep for the system itself. So they hire the person.
Sell the metal. Sell the metal. Sell the metal. Sell the metal. Sell the metal.
Today we're here to talk about high standards and group and team accountability, and welcoming Faris to, I think what I want to say is, permanent residency in Australia. It's his third time here now.
Yeah.
And they've offered him PR and he's accepted. So he lives here now.
You're an immigration officer, that's not true.
I think it was if I have to be honest, I think it was the Lebanese food, right? That's what the calling point to get you here.
Oh, no, man, it was the accent.
The accent?
The accent.
Give us your best.
Kitty backs.
Kitty backs!
Boys!
Sky
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Let's never do that again.
Yeah.
We gather you all here today to talk about some really important, like a very important topic that is when it comes to team, it's high standards, and it's having what we have dubbed as group accountability, or just high standards and team accountability, because I think it's a non-negotiable when you are looking to grow a team, if you want to win and win big. And I think that we've had to learn some hard lessons that I think we can share some wisdom on in and around this stuff too, and share some insight as to how we're going to be sharing a lot of this in a really well-documented process to be able to help bring a great team on and help hold them accountable to a really high standard that will help scale the company to whatever fucking number that you want to get to as well, right? So standards, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have none. Yeah. This is a funny one too, right? Because it sort of crosses over to a lot of the work we do with clients as well, right? Because the ones that typically win the best are the ones that typically have a higher standard for themselves than, you know, the coach would need to, any vendor would need to. And I think that it's an identity thing that you need to take in and get a hold of and a grasp of for you to have that high standard, because you need to want it firstly. And if you don't have that high standard, then you end up in a position where you might not have a position anymore if you're on a team, and you also may not have a team that actually want to work for you if you aren't challenging them to the standard they need to be at as well. But anyway, welcome. What's happening there? Give me the rundown. How's the first couple of days in Australia been for you?
Pretty good, man. It's good to be here. Fucking good ass weather.
Yeah, it's fantastic at the moment.
Amazing. Good to be linked back up with the team too. And I think, as always, right, like when you're in the room together, you're always pushing each other to have a higher standard. And I think it's all areas of life too, right? Like standard in your diet, standard in your workout. I think it's like the how you do anything's how you do everything, right? And I think that's like something so clear. You have a client comes in and it's like the standard at which they just fill up the onboarding for. It translates into the standard that they do everything, you know, and it's very clear. And I bet that same person probably does their bed in the morning. Like that's just
possibly, yeah.
Like that's
I can understand that.
Yeah. Like it's just small stuff like that, man. But no, it's good to be here, man, and I'm excited. We're gonna do a lot of cool shit here.
Yeah, I think a description of some standard stuff might be helpful too, right? Like I was chatting with our setting team just recently, and chatting with some clients about what happened with the setting team as well. And I get the feeling that the wisdom from that can be helpful, and then that can sort of lead into how that's, you know, spreading it across the rest of the team and then with clients as well. One of the analogy that I used, right, was think about a grocery store. And if you were to work in a grocery store as a shelf packer, right, mostly that gets done at night, and your whole job, you are paid to just pack shelves. That's all you do, right? And if you were to come in the morning as the owner of the grocery store, and there was no like stock on the shelves and the stock was all over the ground, right? If you were the owner of that grocery store, do you think that person deserves to get paid?
Depends if they're playing with the standard, right?
Well, but like, no, forget standard. Do you think the person deserves to get paid?
Is there stock on the shelf?
If there's no stock on the shelf, they didn't do their job.
That's no, of course not. That's
Of course.
yeah.
Right? And the conversation that I was having with our setters was, you don't get paid to talk to leads. You get paid to make offers. You get paid a base pay to actually make 3 offers a day to people. If you don't do that, you don't deserve a base pay, because you aren't there with the, like, filtering through leads is useless if you're not making offers. You get paid mostly, you get paid commission on when a sale closes, right? But the only reason you get paid a base pay is not to filter through the leads that we give you. It's to make the offers on a daily basis, so you can get an opportunity to even make commission in the first place. And the standard that I hold for our team, we just let another one go this morning. The standard that I hold for our team in that is like, if there's less than 3 offers a day, that's okay for maybe one day. It's still an orange flag for me. But if it's 2 days now, it's a red flag, and it's like, stop everything. What the fuck's happened? You aren't playing to the standard. Give me every reason and excuse as to why that could be the case. Why is it not happening? So I can help you get to what you want and help you achieve the goals that you want as well.
Right.
And I think that not enough people have a non-negotiable standard that they play by. And the non-negotiable that I use the analogy of the grocery store guy is like, it's fucking non-negotiable. You're asked to put stock on the shelves. Put the fucking stock on the shelves. I can't see it any other way than that, right? And there's nothing that can sway my opinion on that. And when it comes to setting, it's like non-negotiable 3 offers a day. You don't do it, like, you don't deserve to get paid, right? There is nothing in and around that. And I shared that with the clients yesterday, and they're like, holy fuck, I never saw it that way. And they were assessing their own level of whether it be commitment or intent or whatever it might be that was not driving to a standard that would actually help them hit the goals that they would like to. And as a consequence of that, they're not hitting the numbers they want to be hitting. And if they are, it's in many cases either by sheer luck, but the ones that are, and you can speak to this pretty heavily as well, but the ones that are doing the best are usually the ones that don't let a week go past where they're not reviewing everything everything within their possible control to be able to meet their own personal standard and have us challenge it to be bigger, more, and better as well. Where are you seeing that happening with clients right now? Because like, the clients that I see crushing, as an example, like Carlos, guy's just come in, he was at $6,000, he's at $49,000 in the space of 2 months, right? Like, that didn't come because he's fart-assing around and twiddling his fucking thing, like his thumbs at all. My question to you is like, where are you seeing standards play a piece in the client roster and then within the team as well?
Good question. I think the first thing is there is the one thing that's really obvious to me is like people with high standards typically don't let like 2 to 3 days go by without communicating with our CSM. Like that's the first thing is like they have such a high standard of them succeeding that they're not going to let time go by without making sure that they're on track, that they have somebody that's on their back, that they're actually going in the right direction. And that's just a personal standard for them that there's like, hey, like I invested, I'm going to make sure I'm going to get the most out of my time here. And those are the same guys that are usually tracking their numbers too. That's typically like the 2 big things is like they have a high standard of communication and a high standard in making sure that they're actually like tracking what they're doing. And that's something though, like obviously like we tell everybody, right, to like track the numbers from the get-go. Not a lot of people will pick it up right away. But usually the people with like a high standard, they will say, okay, cool. Like they're usually say why, they try to figure out because of standard number 1, which is I need to be in communication. I need to get the most of my time here. So they're always figuring out like what's going on when they're doing something. That's the biggest thing, right? And somebody that may not have the highest standard will let more time go by. They're like 1, 2 weeks. They won't correct things. We'll reach out, we'll try to get in touch with them. But for them, it's not the same high as a priority, right? And somebody with a high standard is also have a high priority. They know like what they need to do too. That's really, really evident. And it's the same thing with the team, right? Like in the CSM team, like we have to make sure there's a high standard of us actually checking people's work. It's a high standard of like submitting the right reports on time, reviewing numbers, doing audits, and doing them in the time that it needs to be done. And that's just a simple standard that needs to be followed in the same way. Like you don't get the base if you don't make 3 offers a day. Like, you don't get to go on past this month if you're not doing the basics of actually tracking the clients, reviewing the audits of their work and making sure that they're actually like on track. Like that's just the basics. And it's the same thing that translate across the team. It's like the more things change, the more things just stay the same all the time.
Talk to that for a second, right? Because I think something got sort of overlooked then, in my opinion, was, we're saying standards, and that might mean fuck all to 90% of the people. 90% of the people that are listening to this right now. And I guess the question is like, what do you see the differences to someone who like a Carlos, right? Like, how do you see him? Like, what is he doing differently in his own, be it non-negotiables or call them standards, versus someone who might come in and go 10 weeks without any fucking result at all, right? Like, what are you seeing the differences in between those people? Because that in many cases shows a clue of where they have a high standard or where they don't as well.
I think the big difference is intrinsic motivation.
Give me an example.
Yeah, like I think with somebody like that, they come in like they had such a high desire to achieve the goal, but it was the like intrinsically like the daily motivation. Like their standard is like, I don't accept going through the day not having at least progressed. And that's because they have such high reasons.
What would progress look like for these guys, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm trying to define all of them.
Typically, it's like, well, I mean, at that stage, trying to get to 50K, building your multiple 6-figure onto 7-figure business, it's sales conversations is the big thing, right? Like progress typically is like, I feel like I'm getting closer to signing clients up, right? I'm getting closer to actually getting the clients that I want, getting closer to booking calls. And the people with the high standards, like it usually starts with the intrinsic motivation to be like, why am I doing this? Like, why is doing this a must for me today? And you know, with somebody like that, like they have, and it's interesting. You'll see somebody who has a family, and that will be a massive driver for them. And then you'll see somebody who have a family, and that'll actually be a massive like source of insecurity and fear, and it'll cause them to avoid everything. And I've just found the people that confront it and like turn the thing that they're really afraid about into like a massive fuel, but then have such a high reason for doing the work. Like they're just so fucking compelled to do it, that then they're able to play at that standard. Like playing at that standard is easy because it's just like, oh, it's just what I have to do to like take care of my family.
Right. So I have some insights here that will vary from that, because everything you said is true, right? But like people's description of a high standard can be entirely different. So for someone, hitting 30 outbound today might be a really high standard for them. For another person, not being on a call today was a fucking bad day.
Right.
So there has to be
levels to it. Yeah.
There has to be a separation and in my opinion, a deliberation between the two, or 88 variables, right? One of the things that I'm always chatting through when I get the privilege of working with a client or working with a setter, right? Like when it comes to sales activity, just because it's a very easily trackable standard. It's like standard 1 is like non-negotiable 3 offers a day. Standard 2 is never being like any day you aren't on a call is a bad fucking day. Standard number 3 is any day you don't get a set is a bad day. Standard 4 is any day you don't have a sales call showing up on a closer's calendar, showing up, not just being booked, is a bad fucking day. And it's waterfalled, right? Because that's where you get the opportunity to grow more, because there's always a new standard to unlock and reach toward at the same time as well, right? Yeah. I've reached out to Phil this morning, and I was like, yo, dude, can you pee in a cup so we can take it to a lab and just fucking clone you, bro?
Phil is one of our new setters.
I'm like,
who do you want to clone? Yeah.
I'm like, buddy, can we just clone you? Like, is that like, are you cool if we do that? We're gonna leave the shit haircut behind. We want you as a great dude, right? But but because he plays to the standard, and but that doesn't come without redirects, right? Like there was a conversation that we had to have, and I went in, like, just because I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way than bulldozing something, right? There's pluses and minuses to that, but it fucking works. In most cases, it works. And I just went in like, boys, like, the fuck do you think you're doing, right? Like, at what point do you think that it's okay that you can sit here and not actually hit the activity that's needed? And Phil was like, you're right. And there hasn't been a day where I hasn't gone 2 sets.
Yeah. And that's also a second trend too. It's just like, if you didn't get the goal that you wanted, like it should be a normal thing for you to ask why. And
why not? Why did I not?
Like,
why
you can't
not? Why not?
Like,
why not?
If something has happened 2 days in a row, it's like, and you haven't asked why, that's a red flag.
Not right? 2 days in a row. This is like, if you're a player, like it should be like every day, right?
Right.
Depending on what your position is, right? If you're playing on a team, if you're in your own company.
Yeah, because I think for clients, like if you're using that same waterfall system, it's like, it definitely, like, you have to put perspective of the person and where they're at, right? Like somebody who's just getting started with like organic and like learning to track the numbers, like a high standard for them is just like tracking your numbers every day and making posts every day and, you know, actually watching trainings. And I think that would be the first thing. It's just like doing the basics. And then the second piece is like offer per day, probably like making an offer per day and getting used to that. And then while also posting an offer per week. And then the other is like making sure that I'm actually showing up to, like, I'm taking a call every day. And I think that's the same, right? Like, and it's funny because that's probably what like they need to translate into their teams as well for them to succeed.
I think standards come from a focus too, though, right? Because there is no shortage of conversations that I've had with clients in the past where it's like, I have an analogy of window shopping versus going in and buying what you fucking want, right? Have you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like, the analogy is like, imagine you're in a shopping mall or shopping center, depending on what country you live in, and you can window shop all day long and look at all these different things, but you end up walking out with nothing other than your step count getting up, and you end up, I know for me, if I do that, I end up leaving the mall feeling like a fucking idiot. I'm like, it's wasting all that time. If I don't purchase it, fucking idiot, right? Versus something broke, I need to go and buy it. I need to go and buy it right now. I'm not going to do it on Amazon because I need it today, right? I'm walking in, I'm going and getting the fucking thing, I'm purchasing it, and I'm getting the fuck out of there to go and use the thing, right?
It's the core thing, intention, right?
Correct, right?
Because
but to finish, to finish that thought off, right? Like, that's the difference between saying like, I'll do my outbound today versus saying, I'm going to grab a prospect by the neck and get them onto a fucking call. That's the difference, right? Like, I hold such a high standard for this, but I have a real strong sales focus of everything that we do, right? There should be nothing that we do that shouldn't turn into money. And I think that many clients should take a fucking string out of that as well. Because if you can think in that context, you'll make a fuckload more leaps and bounds a lot quicker. Because I think a lot of people out there, this is not specifically to any client, but we've worked with like 400 or some shit like right now, and I know that in my experience, I've also sat there and like, some days you sit there with your dick in your hand, doing fucking nothing, right? And it's like, the question is like, what are you doing today to actually get your money? And it's like, it's not making offers, it's being on a call, being like, and the offer is just the vehicle to the call.
It's just one of the steps.
It's the vehicle to the call, right? So like my standard for this stuff is like ridiculously high because otherwise you're just window shopping. Right. And like,
and unless that's your intention, like, the wrong thing, right? Because I know sometimes I have the intention to go to the mall to get steps, but like, that's the difference.
That's a real thing.
But that was the intention, right? Like, the intention was to exercise and not to shop, right? And unless your intention is to exercise in the DM, you better focus on what's actually going to get you the result, right? And it's really interesting, right? Because I think there's so many people that are like doing the right activities, but they're not getting the results because their intention's
way off,
right? Well, they have the tracker, like they have like conversations, like the content. It happens all the time where it's just like that one switch of just like, what's your intention here? And then there's like, boom.
I had this conversation in a group call with the guys yesterday, right? It's like one of my most interesting / frustrating / challenging things to work with someone on is the definition of follow-up.
What a definition.
Right? Like, because I think everyone has a different definition of follow-up, and it all sits on their personal experiences and beliefs.
Right.
And I think with follow-up, right, like many people, it's like, yeah, I followed up with him. So what do you mean by that? What? Like, I reached out to him 2 days ago. And for me, it's like, I showed up on his door 5 minutes after he didn't fucking respond to my message, right? Like, there is a different level of urgency that comes with the standard that's just like, bro, we have fucking food to put on the table, right? Right. And like, for the people that have the wife and the kids at home, right? Like, they don't give a fuck if you send messages today. They could care less. They care about if there's $1 dues in the bank and steak on the fucking table. That's all they care about, right? Or Disneyland, right? Or the metaphorical Disneyland.
Whatever
right?
the prize.
The metaphor, the prize, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I wonder, because now I'm wondering, like, where did my standards come from, right? That's something that I'm considering as we're chatting through this now too. Like what drove my standards is really like I'm curious about right now too, because I think it's just like, for me, I think the standards always come back to what would I regret not happening? Like, would I regret not making a sale today? Yes. What needs to happen to do that then?
Interesting.
Right? Almost always.
Yeah, you got me thinking about where my like success standards might come from.
right? And it's like, for me, it always, there's always a version of it that comes back to like, it's exposure of possible regret that I would regret not happening that drives me, which is like, it's personal leverage.
That's
yourself,
so
right?
interesting. Like you're more pain driven by that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
No, it's not actually pain driven. It's actually it's actually a drive toward, not a drive away.
Like future desire.
Correct. It's like, would I regret
Same.
not having that happen? So I need to do the work today.
I guess it's just a different question you asked to arrive there. Because I think about, like, for example, if I'm doing Divine Success or I've got like a coaching call, like what's the stand? Where does my standard come from that makes me like fucking do all these steps before and check in with people at this, like hit the fucking process so well that people get great results. And I think it's just a future desire to have the best program or have the best thing. Even if I know that like that title doesn't mean much, it's just like pursuing that best thing. And it's like, would I, it's actually a similar story to, remember how I was telling you, like, you know, later this year, I may want to visit Colombia and the whole weight loss journey I want to go on before. And I think there was a big question I was asking myself, which is like, who do I need to be today? And what should I be focusing on today in order to make that person proud in 6 months? And I think it's that similar kind of thinking of just like thinking, all right, cool. Like if we're going to do this for years, what would I need to be doing like today? What kind of level of urgency and attention and all that stuff, like focusing on today, so that 5 years from now, I could look back and be like, damn, we made that person proud and we showed up exactly how we needed to show up. And I think that's where it comes from. Like it's that future desire, right? And for me, I know like that's a huge source if I'm just sitting there. Like if I end the day and I know I have these 5 clients I didn't check in with, like that's gonna bug me. Like that,
yeah.
It's not.
Which for me would be the future regret.
Yeah.
Right. Like
similar, very similar.
Yeah, because like every like, but I also have but a core thing inside where it's like I want to expose regrets, right? Like past regrets and future regrets, right? Like because if there's past regrets, it's like, well, what haven't you done so far that's put you in a position where you don't have what you want right now? And then future regrets, like what would you regret not happening in the next year? What would you regret not happening fucking today? Every day right now, I'm going for a walk for an hour every morning. I'm listening to the podcast that released last week on regret exposure. I listen to it every morning at the moment. My own fucking beautiful Australian voice. And I run the process in it, which is like I walk that walk and I ask myself, what would I regret not happening today? And I write it down and I must action something on that walk. And it's either something that's relative to personal growth, team growth, fucking brand growth. An example of that is like, I sent you the barista document, and like that was a consequence of what I regret not happening this week. Like I need to document this so I can actually, one, make sure that I'm fulfilling on the commitment that I made to Faris about I'm committing to helping you do this right now, because that's a standard that I hold, that I say that I'm going to bring people in, I'm going to get them to have the opportunity that they want to be able to progress and help build teams under them as well. And if I don't do that, I actually end up being the warning and not the example. And then there is the constant uptake of like, what would I regret not happening today? Which is what brought out that podcast fucking plan yesterday. And it's what also brought out I went for that last walk. I went for 3 walks yesterday. That last walk was like, I went for a walk for an hour, asking myself like, why am I struggling so much about this event that we're about to run? It's because I can't communicate it well enough. Like, why not? What would I regret? People, and then it gets like, what would I regret getting to the end of it and people not leaving? So what would I regret them leaving, not having taken away as a principle? Like what I want them leaving going, this was fucking amazing. And it came to like the sales, playbooks, team, identity. If I can get people leaving with those 4 things, then I can make the perspective of the growth of the business unbelievably simple for them. They can say, I need to do this to get to this, to get to this, to get to this, and then the cycle starts again, if that makes sense, right? But it all comes back from, and it is a drive to be excellent, but it's just like, no one's going to fucking do it for me. And I would regret waking up tomorrow morning not being further ahead from that, because it's a progress tool, right? But I'm just aggressive as fuck about it, because no one's coming to save me, and no one's coming to get my fucking things done for me at all. And it also comes into like, you know, if I have to have a hard conversation with someone on the team, or a hard conversation with someone in the client list or whatever else it is, right? It's like, would I regret not having had that conversation today if I knew that would open up a huge door of being on the same page or level of peace, that I know that there's no charge that needs to be addressed that hasn't been addressed because of a level of avoidance or whatever else that it might be, right? So like my motivation is like, I fucking refuse to look at tomorrow as not being the best day ahead, right? And the only way that I know how to do that is like, what would I regret not happening?
Interesting.
So like when it comes to like standards, right? It's like I hold the standard, I would hope other people to hold the standard around as well. Because I want to be able to make sure that I am, you know, doing things that are consistently driving forward so everyone wins. Like that's such a high level of importance to me. And if I don't do that, then I'm the warning,
Interesting.
right? And I refuse to be the warning.
Maybe for somebody who doesn't understand, like, give them context on the warning versus the example.
Remember when you were a kid, they said, don't hang up with those guys,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There you go.
They're the
They're
people
the warning. Yeah.
like mom said, like, please don't hang up with those kids. I was those kids. Imagine you're a client who's coming into our program, right? We as a team get to point at the best client and the worst client. Say the worst client did this. That's why they failed. The best client did this. That's why they won. Never want to be the warning. These are warning signs, right?
Which, by the way, you guys should be doing on your onboarding calls.
100%. Ask what good looks like and ask what bad looks like, right?
100%.
Because I never want someone to be able to point a finger at me and say, like, you were not living up to what you said you would, could, or should be, right? And I think that's purely just because, like, you can't point the finger at me and say that shit. Only I can. And I have to take that responsibility, because if I don't, that's everyone else's way out. That's everyone else's way out if they look at me like that. And I hold that standard because I'm like, I want you to hold that standard. I want fucking Chris to hold that standard. I want Kyle to hold that standard. I want Stephen to hold that standard. I want Susie to hold that standard. If you don't know who Susie is, you'll know soon. Because I have a core belief that people are watching our team and they want the team that we have, and we need to be something that is looked at as that's either a warning or a standard that we want to hold ourselves to.
Right.
And if I'm not doing that,
Yeah. I think the core of it.
what?
I think if I could.
How likely is it that we're going to get that?
I think if I could kind of share one thing that Chris has really instilled into the team, and I think it's also part of who we are as people as well, that really helps with
Person helps.
Person
helps.
That's where I was going to go, is like the actual persons that we have coming in, they're all non-avoidant people. I think that's the core of it all, is like, if we raise a conflict, like, for example, like yesterday, I realized I pointed out something that I needed to fix, and it's like next day is being confronted. How many times we've had stuff with sales team where it's like, oh, like we need to bring this up, and it's like next day or the same day.
Usually same.
Usually, unless there's like time zone or whatever, right? Like, and I think there's probably, if we look at inside of a lot of your guys' team, like, you know, a coach points out to you, like, hey, you have this challenge with your sales team, you know, or your CSM team where they're not doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, how long has that been going on? And once we identify it, it's like usually the standard in which you actually confront something tells a lot. And
What are you tolerating?
Yeah, right. And I've seen this so many times. It's like, hey, your salesperson is not doing this. Like, they should be doing this. This is the SOP how to do it. And it's like 2 weeks later, still doesn't apply it.
So I'm fucking, or if I'm looking at someone and I'm like, your setter hasn't been doing the office, right? And why you were tolerating and allowing that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, on what planet is that okay?
It's like an internal principle standard thing where it's like, I think what it is because I was actually going to tie this back earlier, right? To like, where does it all come from? Also, maybe it comes from the amount of times that we've violated a certain standard so much that we've seen the cost of it for us to be like, this can never happen again.
Churn, or because like the future consequences are like churn, or low close rate, or not enough leads for a setting team, or fucking... Honestly, even just like disconnect that you and I have had, if I'm being entirely honest too, right? Like, there's been many times where you and I have had, like, we haven't had a hard conversation for long enough. It's turned into...
created to a bunch of different perspectives. And imagine this happening. How many marriages does this happen to too, right? Where like people don't have that conversation often enough. And
Michelle and I are going to do a podcast on that.
Yeah, you guys will do that weekly, right? And
weekly review the same way with the team.
Yeah, or daily. Sometimes it's the same process.
Sometimes there's discourse.
Yeah, so it's the same process of like, if something comes up, it gets dealt with right away, right? And even Michelle was saying that on her end is how she does it too. So yeah, I think that's the core of it as well. Is like, you ask your questions like, what are you tolerating right now that if like your business coach came into your business, like would probably tell you that you should stop tolerating that.
Something that's really interesting, because I 100% agree. Something that I've heard ugly Chris, not good looking.
Our salesman.
Yeah. I'm not talking to the third fucking person. Right?
Actual dad,
person. He'll talk to the sales team, and I was like, well, if you were to think about the situation differently, right? Like, what would Chris and Chris do, right? That's like if you were thinking about this, right? Like, and I were in front of you, like, how would you be acting differently? Or if Faris were in front of you, how would you be acting differently, right? Part of the reason why, and fucking Paul doesn't know this, but part of the reason that I chose to bring in a videographer So it's like, now I can't not play to the standard. You can't have a fucking video camera in front of me like 3 or 4 days out of the week and me not be the person that I'm meant to be at all. Like that's not allowed.
Yeah.
It's an accountability tool.
Yeah. Or the standard to actually get, like, there's just no avoiding the work that needs to be done.
No.
Yeah.
Right? Because I would regret anyone being able to point a finger at me saying,
yeah, and what's that quote that you kind of put out as well, which is like the growth that you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. Right?
Yeah.
It kind of like links it all back to that kind of stuff, right? Which is like, yeah, it's interesting how now we're talking about person and character, right? Because I think this is, and we started with like the clients coming in at that person and character, right? Because like I think like at the core of it, like what you're willing and unwilling to accept in your personal life is typically the same standards you carry in your business, and it's very rare that I've seen somebody has like such a high standard in their business, and then their personal life is like a mess. And like,
I see it.
Yeah,
but it's because they're just
doesn't
avoiding
last.
fucking everything.
correct, but it never lasts.
They haven't spoken to their wife in a week.
Right, but
Like-
like how often does that then translate into the downfall of the business though? Like,
Okay, yeah. In
cycles,
many
right?
cases.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I've found that more true than not, that people who generally have a high level of non-avoidance and personal responsibility in their own personal life, that then leads them to actually have a much simpler time in business. Like they're not having as much of a fight with themselves in business, because it's like, oh, this needs to happen in this way. All right, cool. It's the same thing if like you had a fitness coach that just told you like, yo, I need you to track your calories by 6 p.m. and I need you to send me photos of what you do by 6 p.m. Right? And it's the same thing. Like if you do that in your personal life, like you're a business coach, you're gonna have not much of an issue. So it's really interesting. It's a character game. Can't avoid
I was
the
going to say
word.
it's character. You used the who do I need to be thing before, right?
Yeah.
Which is all identity, right? Like,
Identity stuff. Yeah, man.
And I think I remember when we first started the program, that was like step 1, identity shift.
Yeah, right.
Right?
That's the bucket.
That was like the bucket that we needed people to go through before they could actually get the predictable sales they wanted.
Absolutely.
Needed whatever variable that they had considered that they wanted. I think there's a pretty good segue too, right? Like we have an event coming up in Sydney, and we may even use the same model for Vegas or Arizona, because Australia
If it does really well. Yeah.
May 24th, 25th, Sydney. If you want to look at what the sales page for that looks like, that you put together in about
Yeah, it's like
18
4
fucking
hours,
seconds.
just like-
It's fucking fire.
www.predictablesales.co/events, link in the bio. Get a little bit of a snippet of what we have going on.
Come if you can hang out, please do, right? But the whole premise of it is like, I want people to walk away with 4 things. I want you to be thinking about how can I turn sales into playbooks, which turns into team, which turns into identity of you being able to hold those people accountable to the level that we are talking about right now. Sorry, right?
Yeah.
Because like I think there needs, and I think this is a huge gap for a lot of people, right? Like
Massively.
I have my 2 goals theory. I talk about it a lot, right? 2 goals theory is you do the task so you can build the playbook, so you can actually go through the process of getting someone else to walk through that path thereafter.
It's like every step, right? It's like you get the sales to build a playbook. Then when you've reached that step, people, if you only think about the playbook, you're going to procrastinate on it because you don't see how that helps. It's like, what's the goal and what's the thing that it unlocks you to do next? Future pacing, right?
Yeah,
it's so important.
But the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So it's like you get sales, you build a playbook to get yourself out of delivery, right? You get the delivery team, whether if you're an agency, might be a media buyer in the beginning, just click the buttons and a virtual assistant. If you're a consulting company, that may be a VA and a coach, right? Yeah. So it's like sales builds you a playbook in your delivery, which buys you the team to be able to do that. And even in that middle interim period, all you're doing is like, even if you're documenting that process, you now get to standardize it and you get to follow that thing step by step by step by step, which just makes it easier for you anyway, right?
Yeah.
Significantly easier. And then you hold the identity of, now I have someone that can take over that stuff. I must go back to sales now. Go back to sales. I sell. I now document and put together my setting process to hire the setter, where my identity is now that I have to go and get lead flow and train the setter, which goes back to sellers, and you sell again. It's like sales, playbook, team, identity. So your identity have to shift and change. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think the cool thing that we're going to sort of run through at the event that we have is like, I'll walk through that process. And I think in the first stage, which is the delivery side, I'll get you and me to do like a proper session on that together. It's like, I did this, Faris came in, talk about what you did from there. Right. And then same with the sales side. Chris, I did this, talk about what we've done since then at the same time too, right? Yeah. Maybe Kyle even as well, because he's a part of the process too.
It's so important that like if you're the offer owner, you're the CEO, like your job is to put in place in the business like foundational principles that are timeless, that your next person that's going to come in can take those principles and then actually
stack with examples,
and then they can use those principles to then create a system, right? And then this is what you're talking about hiring like leaders, like obviously not a VA, like if you're hiring a leader, right? And I think what typically happens a lot of the time is the person gets so distracted and focused on the system, they don't see the principles behind it, like the level and the standard that they need to keep for the system itself. So they hire the person, and to your like surprise, like the person isn't following the system in the perfect way. The system has flaws, let alone you find out that the person might not have even run the system as much as you think they run it, right? And you're like, damn, there's not as much examples. And then a setter turns and they're like, I didn't have enough examples. I didn't know how to do this, right? All
feedback,
the time.
Fucking
millions, all the time. Right?
Micromanagement, because with setters, you need to micromanage for the first 3 months. That's a non-negotiable.
Yeah, it's a pretty normal thing.
You need to micromanage them, otherwise you don't know if they're actually doing the thing. And I think that's an identity thing most people aren't willing to do. It's like, I micromanage, I feel bad. They fucking need it.
I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Like setters are coming in usually with a low skill. Your job is to make sure that you're leveling them up, but because they have a low skill, like you need to make sure that you're on them.
You need to build the playbooks for people to have the standards to be able to hold, so you can actually make it really easy for them to understand what the best thing for their role is, have the examples available, make sure that they have a very clear picture of what success looks like, right?
Yes.
The hard part is you need to change your identity around that. And I don't think you can do that without speaking to someone like us. Why I say that is because you need someone to be able to redirect you, because your daily habits do stay the same, but you need to add in additional things. And you'll keep missing that if you don't have someone externally to be able to help you see what you can't see. I'm not convinced you can do that.
No, I think everybody's got to have a coach or some sort to be able to point that out.
Just someone to be able to externally say, or even just to talk to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to challenge us, to say like, hey, like you aren't living up to the standard that you could be right now, right? Like, I see you being a multi-million-dollar business owner and you're acting like a fucking 8-year-old. Grow up. If I did that, have that conversation with fucking stacks of people, right?
Yeah, man.
But I'm able to have that conversation with stacks of people because I've had that conversation with me first.
Yep.
A lot.
Tons of times.
A lot.
It's really interesting. You know what this takes me back to? It takes me back to high school basketball.
Go on.
Yeah, because it's really interesting. One of the things, if you've played any like sports, I think, especially basketball, you'll know, like, one of the things that coaches will always tell you to do is to get in position for the rebound when the ball hits. So one of the things fucking players hate, right, is like the defensive shit. It's like you got to get in position for the rebound and you got to box out. And what players want to do is as soon as the ball, they shoot it, right, is they want to run straight for the pass break. They want to run and score. But it's like, no. It's like we protect what we have first. And like that's the standard. And it takes a coach who's going to point that out and be like, bro, your feet aren't squared. And I remember that was the issue I had where like a coach would always point out, it's like, Ferris, you're fucking playing the small forward position. Like square up your feet, grab the rebound, then go for the fast break. And it happens so many times like where they bench me. I remember there's times they bench me. And it's like the challenge is that life, nobody's going to be like save you and bench you, right? It's like if you don't actually sit there and look at like, it's almost like the gym equipment, right? There's like the check mark and then the X. It's like, here's what good looks like and here's what bad looks like. And this is how you do it. And the standard is that you come in the workout, you do the X, and then you clean it up after.
And there's ridiculous fucking images of someone doing it upside down and shit.
Yeah, like, how does that even like but that's literally it. Like that's what the playbook is. It's like, what are the greens, the checks of like, this is what good looks like, and then what are the bad?
We give all ours away too.
Oh
right?
yeah.
So like if you don't want to come to the event, you're not at the stage where you can give a fuck about that. Facebook.com/groups/predictable sales. Come join our group. Link will be below as well. We give all our playbooks away, right? Like we want you to see them. We want them you to be able to view what they look like and then say, hey, I'd love some help being able to build a team to be able to do this and understand. One, I want to be around people who are already doing this so I can actually get your insight and know what the fuck to do, so you can actually look inside my business to tell me where am I not doing the best that I can, or where is my team fucking up, or whatever else that it is.
Which we'll do every week.
Every week, right? Like one of the standards I had to hold a couple of months back is like, yo, we aren't checking our clients' numbers enough, right? And that was like a huge redirect for the whole client success team. It was like, yo, we're not doing that enough, and we can't hold them to a standard if we're not doing that. And I'm doing it in the sales team daily, right? Obviously, to make sure that things are moving effectively, and I can't see any red flags there. Orange flags, yep, red flags. They're all cause for concern.
Right.
And like for you guys, right, like grab the playbooks, check them out, and when you are ready, like you shouldn't work with anyone but us. I don't give a fuck what you say. Like you shouldn't at all.
Like
we've been through it, we're doing it, we're in it now. We're not like we're doing it right now.
Straight up. I'm not the kind of person that's gonna say we're the number one, we're the best. Like I don't think that, but I also know like results speak for themselves. So the number of times we've had people go elsewhere and come back is just more evidence for me to go like, look, I don't know where we stack in this industry, but I do know we'll get you a result. And we do know.
That was the humble way of saying fuck you. No, not fuck you, but like the humble way of saying like I know we are good at what we do.
100%. It's confident humility. It's confident humility.
Yeah, I'm a different person. So.
But like that's me, right? Like I'm extremely confident that A, you'll fucking love our playbooks, but B, you'll actually see how those playbooks are going to help you translate to being able to hold a team accountable at a high standard without micromanaging them. And C, right? You'll actually see all the results in the past of people who've implemented these playbooks and now are actually succeeding. Like if you just join the group, you'll see that stuff.
This is people who have like $300,000 per month businesses, fucking $100K per month businesses. We have a client who was at $500K per month as well, who ended up falling from grace because he wasn't following it effectively too. Like all of these things are built based off the foundations that we're talking about here right now. And I think that the thing that really makes the biggest difference is outside inside to ensure that you are actually following things effectively. Because you can take a playbook and do the best that you can with it, but if you aren't the person and you don't have someone challenging you to be that person, you will always fall to the standard that you hold for yourself as opposed to the one that people can see in you that you can't see in yourself yet. And if someone else can see that inside you and they help you bring that out, the best version of you, so you can be that for your team, so you can be that for your wife, so you can be that for your community, whatever the fuck it is, right? It's fucking impossible to lose.
Yeah, what was that great quote that I think is said in sports, but also in military?
Sell the medal.
Well, that's one of the great ones, but it was like, you don't rise to your ambitions, you fall down to the level of your training.
Correct.
Right, and I think that's the message of the standards thing here, right? It's like your team is not gonna rise to your dream picture of what you think they're gonna do. No, they're gonna fall down to the level of your standard. And if your standard isn't up to par to the results that you're looking to go, then that's probably something to change.
I think the biggest challenges that you'll come up against when you are going down this path is like, one, is my playbook good enough? That's a huge challenge, and like you don't know until you've had someone else go through it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So like you can bring your team in, and if you don't go through that process of having someone else externally look through that shit and make sure that it is being held to a standard and it is going to be good enough, right? Like the risk that you run is that you bring a whole lot of team and burn them, and then think that you can't run a team.
Yeah, but that's also a personal standard of not expecting to get things right the first one, but also not needing to have it like all worked out. You know what I mean? Because I know like reality is it's half. Like there's definitely a lot of people that are like, yeah, your playbook, you need to spend more time yourself doing it. But I've also seen a couple of playbooks, like clients that we've worked with, where it's like, damn, like this is really good. Why haven't you hired the person? And they're just so scared.
The challenge there is that they don't have no one's given them permission to yet. Right? Like no one said go and get it right now. Right. And that's another, in my opinion, a huge obstacle you'll face if you're doing it alone. Yeah. Right? Like if you're doing it alone, you will face a huge obstacle of like, is it the right time for me to do something? Right? Whereas if you have an external point of view looking at you saying, do it, I'll back you. Go exactly.
And do it. We'll catch you when you fall, don't worry.
Go and get it done, right?
Yep.
Like one of the biggest challenges that I see in a lot of, like for myself too, right? It's like we're all looking to make sure that we're not going to make the wrong decision. And I think that many people don't build that team or don't like hold their team accountable because they're scared of, one, the team fucking off, or two, making a wrong decision with team are going to go broke and dead. And I know that one of the biggest fears I have is like homeless, dead. It's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But like that's a core thing, right? And it's like, I can't imagine I'm the only person that feels like that, right? So there would be a lot of other people out there that are scared of making a decision around, should I do this or should I not? One of the biggest risks that you'll run is like, how do you know the decisions you're making are the right ones? In many cases, you don't.
In many cases, it's just about making a decision.
How do you know you shouldn't have made this decision to bring someone on fucking 6 months ago?
Yeah. You know what's the There's a really cool lesson I learned from Mr. Bezos. He said this, I don't know how I picked it up, but it was just a long time ago. He's like, the best decision-making framework that I've come across with Amazon is to look at decisions like doors. Is it a revolving door where I can make decision and come back? Or is it a one-way door where if I go in this door, I can't come back? And a lot of you guys are looking at simple decisions as a one-way door when you don't realize like not making a decision is fucking you up. Like you just have to make a decision, especially if it's one that you can like come back from. Like for example, if you are looking to like hire a setter, hire somebody, and you maybe don't have a lead flow or all the things in place, like you can come back from that decision. Like you can come, like that's not the end of the world, right? Whereas like if you were to put up, you know, like you were to do something for your business that's like a make or break, right? Like that's where you would actually have to seriously consider. And I think a lot of the times, like at the end of it, it's just looking at it, all right, cool. Like I'm not going to waste my time trying to perfect this decision. What's a decision I can make today? And how would I know if it's going well? These are the metrics of success. And how would I know if it's not going well? And then just do it. And then you'll see the outcome and you can change. And
you can't do it alone though. Full stop. I don't give a fuck what you say.
You can't what?
You can't do it alone. You can't do it without that's an insight. No chance. Because you'll never know if you make it.
Well, like you wouldn't even know what the conditions of success are. You won't even know those parameters.
Well, the other part is a huge issue that I see with people doing it alone is if you don't have someone else externally looking in that has examples of other people's businesses that you can be benchmarked against that are relative to the things that you are doing, as opposed to you benchmarking yourself against what you see in other people's marketing as their top of top, when in reality, they're marketing one thing that was the best thing they've ever done, as opposed to all the shitty things that have happened prior to that, right? There's a picture of Homer Simpson that I always reference back to in this, where he has, he looks skinny, right? And then it shows there's a mirror behind him, and it shows his whole back taped up. Right? Right? And it's like what people are actually marketing about their business is this skinny version of Homer Simpson, when in reality, the actual day-to-day looks like the back, right? And one of the most common things that I'm like, a client of ours the other day, right? He's like, man, I don't want to sell at the moment because of our results aren't good enough. I'm like, all right, man, let's just fucking stop for a second, right? Where the fuck is this coming from?
Yeah, who are you looking at right now?
Right, and it's like, well, these guys are happening. It's like, you know, we've got all these clients not getting a result. I'm like, how many clients have you had? 70. Okay, how many have not gotten the result you said? 6. Did you know that your industry only gets, like, only 10% of your industry gets a result? What do you mean? So if your industry, only 10% of people are getting a result, that's 90% of people that aren't, right? And how many of the people that you are working with, or have worked with, or should work with, are working with a subpar agency that are not going to be able to get them the result? You've worked with 70 people, and you've gotten 63 of them result that they came to ask for.
Yeah, like
the fucking like shit at math, 80-ish plus success rate, right?
Whatever it is, it's excellent.
How fucking dare you not look at that though?
Yeah, for real.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like without that external insight, it's like you just think you're shit.
Gap not gang. People are just looking at that, man.
You just think you're terrible, right? Because
Yeah,
you're being what you're doing is you're benchmarking yourself against someone's best day at all times.
Right.
Right? When in reality they have Homer Simpson that fat put together behind him. And you just can't see it. The difference
100%.
is I can. I get to see it. I study this stuff. You study this stuff. We're watching it with the other 400 clients that we've worked with, right? We also get insight because the companies that you want to go and work with, I am friends with the people that fucking run them, and they are not as cracked up as they fucking say that they are. Let me tell you when I say that. Some of them are, some of them are not too, right? But like, I have privilege of having like market insight from a lot of these things where it's like, they are not who they say they are in a lot of cases. And our fucking, like our core values are the equal and opposite of that, right? And I'm always going to tell the truth.
Yeah, man. It's,
Always.
yeah, man, you can't be sitting there, you know, if you're a new basketball player comparing yourself to Steph Curry saying, man, like they're making, he's made 16,000 threes in his career. He shoots at this percentage. But what you're not seeing is the 2 million shots he's made at the gym. And
the 300 he does a day.
And the 5 million he's missed when he was young. Like you're not seeing that, right? And I think that's probably a big thing in all the online space, right? Like people are just looking and comparing to the best.
If you would like to make less mistakes and only make the moves that you genuinely will see through to you bringing on a great team who helps you build a great team, we didn't even speak on that. I think it's a whole podcast within itself.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
But bring in that standardization, bring in the playbooks that would be able to help you scale to whatever fucking number you want to. please, May 24th, 25th, come to our event. I think it would be absurd if you didn't. It's a fucking pennies on the dollar of what you'd be getting back in value, right? We'll review everything. We'll make sure you make no shitty moves, and you'll get everything you want. Scale to the hundreds of thousands per month, and you'll get out of that too, right? Outside that, join our Facebook group if it's not that stage for you just yet. Steal the playbooks, run through them, see what we do, right? And outside that, I hope that this has given you guys some insight as to how you might be acting like a shitty fucking leader right now. And if you're not, give yourself a pat on the back.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Still come and work with us either way.
Yeah. Let's help you get those championship rings, man.
Yeah, man. Toodles. Peace.